I'm Jay Capasso, the row crop extension agent for Columbia County. Today I'm at the North Florida Research and Education Center, Suwannee Valley, and we're going to teach you how to take a tissue sample in field corn. This is a really important practice to conduct during the season that can help you manage your nutrients effectively and determine what kind of nutrients from your fertilizer program is getting into your plant.
I'm Joel Love with the University of Florida, located here at the North Florida Research and Education Center in Live Oak, Florida, Suwannee Valley. And today I'm with Jay Capasso, the row crop agent in Columbia County, and with Kelly All, our Suwannee River Partnership Outreach and Education Coordinator. And today we're talking about the importance of tissue sampling and what we can learn from tissue sampling, specifically today here at the Research Center on corn. And we're in a field here of dryland corn. There's two different varieties here. And so if we were going to tissue sample this corn, what are we trying to learn from it? Well, when we pull a tissue sample on any crop, but specifically in this case corn, we're trying to learn what the nutrient status is of that crop. In this case, we're trying to, primarily a lot of times we're looking at where the nitrogen levels are in there, but there's other things we can learn. There's all the major nutrients, N, P, and K. There's secondary nutrients, calcium and magnesium and sulfur, and then there's micronutrients. All of these can be tested in these plants to see if we're deficient. And depending on what stage of growth the crop is at, we can actually go back, in some cases, if we have the right equipment and the right resources, we can go back and correct some of these things we see in crop, especially if we got an irrigation system where we can spoon feed through a center pivot. So today, we're looking at this corn plant, and it's getting very close to tasseling. And in fact, right here you see there's a tassel right here. If you feel it, you'll feel it right there in that leaf. So it's getting ready to pop out. And they say, well, how do we determine where to pull the leaf to get the right leaf for this plant? So if we pull the leaf down here too low on this existing plant, nutrients are raw from here and sent to the new growth. So we may get a poor reading. We may show the plant is deficient, and maybe it's not. If we pull this leaf up here, we may show the plant has plenty of nutrients. And so what we want to pull is somewhere kind of back down in the middle, and we call that the most recently matured leaf. In the case of corn, it's the leaf with a collar that's open. So you think about a shirt collar, and I got mine open right here. It would be this leaf right here. This one right here is not completely open, so I would grab this leaf, and that would be one leaf. And what we want to do is walk through the field to get a part of the field that represents the field the best. Don't go through a super good spot or a super weak spot. And you'd pull 15 to 25 of these leaves, or whatever you could physically get in a plant tissue bag. And Jay's going to talk about how you would prepare the samples later on, but these you would send off to a private lab like Waters Lab or Southeastern Agri Labs and get them tested for nutrients. And typically you can get them shipped overnight, and then you can get the samples back very quick with email today. So that's what we're looking at. So I'm going to move over to this plant, and now we got something a little different going on here. This plant has a shoot coming out. So once plant leaves the VT stage and starts entering the reproductive stage, now we got an ear shoot coming out. So when we're sampling at this stage of growth, we don't want to pull the recently most mature leaf, because if you look up here, all of these are open. Now we want to pull the ear leaf, or the shoot leaf. In this case, the ear is coming out, so we would grab this leaf. So that would be the difference. And then if you look right over here, it's even more defined or definitive. Now we have a silk coming out. So it's very easy to see now. You would pull this one right here, or even this one. Both of them are trying to make an ear, so either one would be appropriate for a corn tissue sample.
This may vary a little bit based on which lab you send your corn tissue samples to, but I want to review the recommendations of the commercial lab we most commonly send our corn tissue samples to here in the Suwannee Valley agricultural region of Florida. So during the seedling and early vegetative growth stages, so from about V1 through V6, which is the growth stage represented underneath the number 1 in the figure below, you would sample the entire above ground portion of the plant, and you would cut the stalk maybe with a pair of scissors about an inch above the soil surface. And you would collect about 25 through 30 representative plants throughout the field for one sample. For the V7 through VT growth stage, so just before reproductive growth, you would sample the first fully developed leaf below the whorl, and you would collect these samples from about 15 or 20 plants throughout the field for one sample. And that would be represented underneath the number 2 in the figure below. We would assume that corn plant there is about at the V7 growth stage. And then finally, from the tasseling to silking growth stages, which is represented in the figure below underneath the number 3, we would sample the leaf opposite and below the ear from about 15 or 20 plants per sample.
So I'm going to go over now some of the things that you need to tissue sample corn. One of the most important things is having a paper bag with you. And this is from a laboratory that provides bags to people that are sampling when they analyze the corn. And you can see that it's a paper bag and that it has different holes in the sample bag that allows the sample to breathe while it's on its way to the lab in the mail. So that's really important. And it works a lot better than a plastic bag. If you enclose leaf tissue in a plastic bag for an extended period of time, it gets very moist and it could not be in a very good condition when it gets to the lab. Another thing to keep in mind is to try to overnight samples if possible, so it spends very little time in the mail traveling to the lab. If you have to sample one day and you can't send it through the mail the same day, you can always store your leaf tissue in a refrigerator overnight before you send the sample in the mail. Some other things that are important is to bring some deionized water or distilled water with you, and that's water that is devoid of nutrients that can be helpful for cleaning off your tissue sample. This is important early in the season when you have very small corn that's growing close to the ground that could collect sediment and soil onto the leaf tissue during a rainfall event, or even later in the season during fertigation events. And it can collect fertilizer on top of the leaf tissue. So when we analyze corn, we only want to analyze the nutrients that is being taken up into the corn, not which is on the leaf. So that's why you'd bring deionized water to rinse off your tissue with, and then you can always bring paper towels with you to wipe off the tissue when you are done, because you don't want wet tissue when you send it to the lab. So now we're gonna roll up some of this leaf tissue and we're gonna put it into the bag. And it should be ready to send off to the laboratory and to help us get an idea of what kind of nutrients have been taken up by the plant at the current growth stage. And generally the laboratory will require you to fill out what kind of growth stage the corn is at. So make sure that you know how to tell the difference between different growth stages based on the vegetative growth and the reproductive growth of the corn. And another thing that is really important is reviewing the results. So you can see the results we have for a different field here, and you can see that they provided us the results depending on the nutrient on a percentage basis or in a parts per million basis. And this is based on the growth stage that is stated on the results here. And they provide us their recommendations based on what they determine to be excessive, high, sufficient, low, and deficient ranges. If you want to see what the University of Florida ranges are for different nutrients, you can always contact your extension agent and they can get in contact with specialists focused on nutrient management at the University of Florida. And that's pretty much it on tissue sampling corn. It's a very good practice to conduct during the season to determine if your fertilizer program is working and if you're in the zone, in the range that you want to be for various different nutrients for corn growth.